Hello, everyone. This is Sikian again. I'm feeling slightly better today. My voice is slightly better, I think. Um, well, this video isn't about me. This is about the Week 4 FAs and trades of the HIVE Beedrill division. Because Week 4 was the first week that FAs and trades were allowed. So I figured before we get to the next PRs, I'd discuss the changes to each team because a lot of teams actually have quite a couple changes to them that are actually going to really affect their makeup and how they are going to play. So I wanted to just go ahead and do a recap of all the teams that are changing, what their changes are, and how I think it will affect the general team, and whether or not I think it improves the team, makes it slightly worse, patches up any holes, etc., etc. I won't talk about like people potentially making FAs or trades like in regards to specific matchups because I do not want to spoil any. I do not want to spoil any potential brings that they may have made specifically that their opponent doesn't realize. Because my purpose of making these videos is not to affect the games as a whole or to affect the player as a whole. It's to just give my own 2 cents and give the people playing like my opinions on how they're doing so far. So anyway, we'll move on. I kind of have these ordered in like how much they affect the general teams. So first up is the Philadelphia Scolopeds. They only made one FA, and it was Slurpuff for the recently dropped Comfy, and we'll get into what happened with Comfy later. But okay, so getting rid of Slurpuff loses them a belly drum setup sweeper, loses them a Calm Mind setup sweeper, and loses them a Sticky Web user and a Wish Passing Fairy. Getting Comfy gets them a Fairy with reliable recovery, a great ability with triage, a priority user, and I also did do something special. I pulled up their teams of what the teams were before and what they look like after. And Inverses is relatively unaffected. Now, this trade, I'm not too sure about, because I feel like Inverse is losing a lot of utility in Slurpuff and like gaining like not too much other than priority and Comfy. Like I know it gets some utility moves that Slurpuff doesn't. Like it has the ability to be cleric with aromatherapy, and it gets priority with its recovery, being synthesis, draining kiss, giga drain. So it also has potential to be a Calm Mind sweeper. I just think Slurpuff not only had a lot more ways to sleep, but had reliable enough bulk to, be used as a bulky pivot, to be used as a wish passer. I just feel like I'm not sure how I feel about this one. I'm sure he has his reasons. Might be because he lost to Comfy week 1. Maybe. But he already has very solid priority in Infernape, having both physical and special priority in Vacuum Wave and Mach Punch. Scizor has Bullet Punch. Bisharp gets Sucker Punch. So I don't think he needed another priority user, though Priority Fairy is very solid to check pesky dragon types. So there's that. And now he has priority to offensively check a lot of the common offensive typings, like Dark, Ghost, Psychic, potentially Ice even, because I know there are some good there are some good offensive Ice types coming up in their matchups. we're going to see how things go. And how he uses Comfy from now on. So we'll move on to the FC Poplio, who, my little arrow graphic isn't in this one, but trades, but it's going to be FAing Garbodor for Amistar, and then appointing Amistar and Escavalier as Z-Mons. And let me just say this right now. David has so many Z-Mons. He has, let me just pull this up right now. He has Komao, Zoroark, Diancie, and Venusaur. Diancie, Venusaur, and now Amistar and Escavalier. That's a ridiculous amount of Z-move users. So his team is very versatile in that he can bring a Z-move on basically whatever he wants. Aside from Donphan and Rotom Wash and Latias. Like, Latias may be a missed opportunity, but he's definitely going for quantity over quality. And Komao is a very good Z-move user. Zoroark is a very good Z-move user. Venusaur, if it's set up in the sun, can be a very good Z-move user. I think he's definitely doing a good job. Now, as for the FA itself, getting Amistar over Garbodor. Now, he keeps the utility that Garbodor has. Because he gets to keep Spikes and Toxic Spikes, and he also adds Stealth Rock. So, I believe he picks up his 4th Stealth Rocker? Yeah, he's got Como, Donphan, Diancie, and Amistar. He picks up a grass weakness, which with a Escavalier, Venusaur, Latias, Doublade, Megazard, Komao, he does not have any problems dealing with grass types. He picks up another fighting weakness, which also is not that much of a problem because again, Zard, Venu, Latias, Doublade. I feel like defensively, Amistar is very solid on this team. Like, a lot of Garbodor's weaknesses in Psychic and Ground are also covered by a lot of the Pokemon that I mentioned, and he had Rotom Wash, Latias, Megazard. Like, I think David's team has actually gotten really well put together. Like, I think, in terms of synergy, his might be the best team at this point. In my opinion, I think his team is very well synergized in that all of his weaknesses are covered by Pokemon he has. Like, he has Zard to set up the sun. I mean, I'm sure it is fun to use. But he has Zard to set up the sun. But he also has Rotom, Diancie, Amistar, Latias. He has Fire Sponges of his own. He has ways of dealing with, like, everything that his opponents can deal with him. Also, Rockers. Against Zard, he has Donphan, Latias, Rotom Wash. He has ways to deal with them, so everything about his team is very well put together. And no, this isn't a draft analysis again, I'm just saying that putting Amistar in this team gives him everything that Garbodor had, continues his good synergy, and, gives him a Shell Smash Sweeper. On top of all of that, he also gets a Sweeper, which could come in handy because he does have quite a bit of setup on his team, with especially with the Sun utility. So we'll definitely see what he does with this. I'm not going to spoil too much of all the things Amistar can do, but you know the general stuff. Hazard stacking lead or Shell Smash Sweeper. But I'm sure David may have some tricks up his sleeve. We'll see. So, we're going to move on to the San Francisco Star Raptors, coached by Genius. And he is FAing Mega Glalie and Blacephalon for Vaporeon and Mega Houndoom. Now, I actually really like this FA. Because if you look at his team before and after, you see he gains a little bit of extra speed in Mega Houndoom, reaching 115, which is actually his fastest Pokemon. And that 115 speed tier gives him a very useful speed tier in being able to speed tie with Pokemon like Azelf, with Pokemon like Zygarde 10 with very common Pokemon, not common, but like very fast, very offensive Pokemon that Mega Houndoom can blow back. And especially it synergizes, I think, a bit better with his Sun Core of Torkoal and Victory Bell. Because he doesn't have to bring it every single week, but offensively, Mega Houndoom, I think, can do a lot more than Blacephalon because of Solar Power. It's got good utility moves in Flame Charge, got priority in Sucker Punch, it can Pursuit Trap. It's a good mixed wall breaker, especially in the sun. I think Mega Houndoom's going to do very well on this team, and it keeps up his idea of fire spam with Torkoal, and now Mega Houndoom, and also Victory Bell with Weather Ball. And Vaporeon, also, I just don't think Mega Glalie was really doing too much on the team. Like, he may struggle a bit with Dragon types, because I don't think he has too many ways to super effectively hit them, but Dragon types are going to be pressured a lot versus him, especially with Victory Bell, Houndoom, Scolipede, Crocodile. Like, he just has a lot of offensive pressure on his team, so it is going to be very hard for certain Pokemon to, deal with it. I don't think Dragon types are going to be that big of a problem to his team, because I think he can just pressure them to the point where they can't really stop him. We also get Vaporeon over Blacephalon, which with Mega Houndoom, Blacephalon wasn't really necessary anymore. And I think Vaporeon fixes something that I had a lot of problems with for Genius's team. He did not have a water type, and he had a Sunsetter. He was very weak to opposing fire spam. His only fire resists were Blacephalon, which now Mega Houndoom, which still isn't the best fire resist. I mean, I guess pre-Mega against Flash Fire. Torkoal, and Dragonite. None of them really wanted to take a fire move, and since he's, I believe, every week brought the sun, there's been a hard time for him to deal with opposing fire types. And we'll see how he uses Vaporeon from now on, but it gives him a bulky pivot, especially with Baton Pass. It gets Wish Passing and Heal Bell. So if anyone wants to try to status him with Thunder Wave to slow down his faster threats like Scolipede, Mienshao, Mega Houndoom, he can Heal Bell them off. He can Wish Pass into offensive threats like Metagross, Crocodile, Houndoom, Mienshao, Dragonite, make sure they get in safely, especially Dragonite, considering Dragonite always wants his multi-scale up, and a lot of these Pokemon don't actually get reliable recovery. Like, I think his only form of reliable recovery on his team are Mew's Roost and Dragonite's Roost as well. So, Wish Passing is going to be great on this team. I think Vaporeon was an amazing pickup. Why Vaporeon wasn't FA at all, I'll never know. Hi, cat. What's up? What's up, Cletus? Yes, my cat's name is Cletus, and he is a fat baby. He came to say hello. Anyway, we'll move on to the Barcelona Bagons, coached by Ice. And he is dropping Gourgeist and Conkeldurr for Serena and Heracross. Now, okay, one, why is Heracross in the FA section? How did nobody pick that thing up? That thing is terrifying. So, I think this one was really preference on Ice's part. Because he may lose an Ice type in Gourgeist, but he gets Serena, another Rapid Spinner, which actually I think he kind of needed, because his only forms of hazard removal were Defog, Landorus, and Defog Arrow. I think those were his only form of hazard removal when he had a Zard X. So I think picking up a spinner was really good for him. He does lose a ghost type, and he does have a small bit of a fighting weakness. His only real fighting resists are Landorus and Zard before Mega Evolving. But especially with the addition of Heracross, I think he might be able to handle that a bit better. Because Heracross will get very bulky behind screens. And unlike Conkeldurr, Heracross does give him a bit more of a cleaner rather than him a cleaner / wall breaker instead of just a flat out wall breaker. Whereas Conkeldurr was a bulky wall breaker, it was very slow, and yes, the opponents could have a hard time taking it out, but its speed really, I believe, did hinder it, and I think it was a bit easier to take advantage of. Whereas Heracross can be Choice Scarf, can be a Flame Orb, Wall Breaker, and especially because it gets set up of its own in SD, which is something Conkeldurr did not. Conkeldurr got Bulk Up, which isn't as effective as SD. And while Conkeldurr got Drain Punch for sustaining power, Heracross may lack sustaining power, but it has pure offensive breaking and cleaning ability. Choice Scarf, Moxie. Also, the two really great abilities in Moxie and Guts. Conkeldurr also got Guts. It got Iron Fist. It got Sheer Force. But Heracross, with Moxie, has the ability to be a scary cleaning Choice Scarf set, has the ability to be a Guts Flame Orb Breaker set, has the ability to be bulky as well. I think Heracross is gaining just as much versatility, plus also slightly patching a weakness that I think his team did have in fighting. And Heracross will still end up being bulky behind Aurora Veil, which is still the bread and butter of Ice's team. And with Serena Rapid Spinning, I think it does offer a lot of utility, and it also gives him a Cleric, which I don't think Gourgeist got Aromatherapy. I'm not sure if Hail limits Synthesis, so I'm not sure if it limits Serena's recovery, but if so, it would have done the same to Gourgeist anyway. So, he does lose a Leech Seeder and a Will-O-Wisper. He does lose some utility in the forms of status he can inflict, but I don't think that'll be that big of a problem, especially with Licky Licky in the back being able to Wish Up and, I think, be a second Heal Beller. He's not going to be forced to run Cleric on Serena every week. But it gives him an option if he doesn't think Licky Licky is good for the matchup. We'll move on. Next, we got the Arizona Zygardenals, coached by Dougal. There are a lot of FAs this week, so strap in, boys. He is getting rid of Volcanion, Mimikyu, Zygarde, Doggo, and Galvantula for Patrick Starmie, Florges, Haxorus, and Talonflame. Now, he is patching up something that I thought was very bad with his team. Volcanion was both his fire and his water type, and he didn't have any backups for that. So, once Volcanion went down, as you can see, he did not really have anything to deal with fire types, which was evident when Inverse just kind of, in the beginning of the game, of his Week 3 game, just kind of led with Infernape and got a kill, because his only switch-in was Volcanion, and it did not want to appreciate anything that wasn't a fire attack from Infernape. Like, fire types with dual typings just kind of run through the Zygardenals, but with the additions of Starmie and Talonflame, he at least does have some responses outside of just Volcanion. Now he has Starmie, which with 115 speed is able to outrun a lot of those offensive fire types like Infernape. And Talonflame gives him a solid check to fighting types, which is something that his team also struggled with outside of... I know he had 2 ghost types, but Palossand isn't something you're going to want to bring every week. And Mimikyu is relatively frail. Like, I know it gets disguise, but it's not going to be taking too many hits. Like, all it would really take is for the fighting type to predict once, take out the disguise, and then it's just kind of like easy pickings at that point, because it probably won't take 2 hits very well. Like, I don't know. It just doesn't seem like Mimikyu was the best Pokemon, which is why I think it was perfectly good for him to drop it for Florges. Because Florges, on this team, yes, I know a lot of his Pokemon do get reliable recovery in Talonflame, in Skarmory, in Starmie, Roserade, but it doesn't force them to run recovery now, and it can get those things in safely. It doesn't force Roserade to be a cleric. It doesn't force Skarmory or Starmie to run hazard removal, because I think his only form of hazard removal before was Skarmory. Was it Skarmory? I think it was Skarmory. Yeah. So now he gains 2 hazard removers in Florges and Starmie, and he gains an excellent 115 speed tier and a 125 speed tier in Talonflame, I think. Which, even without Gale Wings, I still think Talonflame is a threat. And a really solid pickup for Tier 3. You'll see, that covers Volcanion. Like, Volcanion is a wall breaker, but Starmie can fulfill the role of being a speedy pivot. It can be bulky. It can be a wall breaker with specs, or with specs or life orb. It gets so much more coverage. It has reliable recovery, so it can check things better. It has rapid spin for hazard removal. Like, wait, Volcanion gets defog as for Gen 7, I think, right? But Volcanion probably doesn't want to run defog as a move slot, so I think Volcanion is one of those non-defoggers. Like, there are just certain Pokemon that don't want to be forced to run hazard removal. Like, if you're using a move slot for them to run hazard removal, you're probably doing it wrong. Like running Stealth Rock Mega Pinsir. I mean, who does that? I'm just kidding. That's actually really cool. So Florges gives him a solid fairy type. He gets to keep the ghost typing with Palossand. And I feel like that about covers Florges end of the spectrum and covers Starmie. Talonflame gives him a setup sweeper with Bulk Up and Swords Dance, because Bulk Up, bulky Talonflame is actually kind of scary. It gives him support with Will-O-Wisp, which I know Mimikyu had, but when are you going to be running Will-O-Wisp and Mimikyu? It gives him a hard fighting spam user outside of Skarmory. It gives him a hard fire abuser. It basically, I think Starmie and Talonflame just are very good benefits to his team with Volcanion, but in order to do that, he did need to get rid of Galvantula, which does get rid of the sticky web element of his team, but with the speed tiers being patched the way they are, I don't think he needs them as bad, because he has Lopunny, he has Talonflame, he has Starmie, that all punish those Pokemon that are around the 100 to 115 speed tier marks. He has I think he's gotten a lot more speed, and I think his team is going to be doing a lot more better and doesn't need the sticky webs anymore. He does lose a fast electric type, but all in all, I think that was a trade worth making to patch up his team. Also, Zygarde was a good ground type and a good dragon type, but it's very frail, so it would have been... So, I don't really even consider Zygarde a setup sweeper, because setting up with Zygarde 10% is hard as hell. Like, there are not very many matchups that you're not just going to say, okay, I'll just run Bandit 1,000 arrows and do a lot of damage. Because I'm not going to be able to set up on really anything. There is just nothing that takes a... There's just nothing that Zygarde takes a hit from. At least that's the way I felt with Zygarde when I used it. Like, there was just no reason to run it setup when I could just run hard hitting. But with Haxorus, you have options. You have Choice Scarf, you have Life Orb, you have Choice Band, and you have setup, and he made it a Z move user in place of Zygarde. So, you can use coverage like Earthquake and Poison Jab to just blow back any of its potential counters. And Haxorus has more base bulk, and it has a good speed tier in 97. Sure, it's not the coveted base 100 speed tier, but 97 is still good, outspeeding Pokemon like Kyurem Black and Crocodile. Like, outspeeding, like, a lot of those niche Pokemon that hit that really rough speed tier that's slightly below 100, but still a pretty solid speed tier. I think Haxorus is going to overall work out better on this type of team than Zygarde. And I think Dougal has really patched up a lot of problems with his team. I like this trade. This FA, I mean. So, we're going to go on to the Washington Clawizards. And boy, does he have a lot. A lot of them. First of all, why is Comfey on the screen twice? Okay, I'm going to explain that now. He traded Ace Comfey. I mean, he traded Ace Gigalith for Comfey. And then he dropped Comfey, and Inverse would later pick that up, for Aromatisse. And I like that. It gives him a Wish Passer, it gives him a Cleric. You know, roles that he kind of needed after he dropped Gardevoir. I think it gives him a more reliable form of that. Yeah, and he gets to keep that secondary fairy typing that he gets from losing Gardevoir and Comfey. So, yeah, like, I can speak from experience that I don't think you want Tapu Koko to be your only fairy type, because it's not very good at being a fairy type. It's good at being a fast, speedy wall breaker / pivot / well, Tapu Koko's good at being basically whatever you want it to be. But a solid fairy type, when its only fairy type move it gets is Dazzling Gleam, it is not. So, having Aromatisse gives him something to take the pressure off of being a fairy type from Gardevoir and Comfey, which he is dropping. And he drops Gardevoir to get Slowking in his place. And getting Slowking in its place gives him a bulky Psychic type, which is something that he was also losing from Gardevoir. It gives him a bulky Water type, which is something that he really didn't have. He only had Keldeo. I'm gonna sneeze. Sorry about that. Am I still recording? Oh, okay. Yeah, I see it's on camera. Oh, my cold's back. I gotta headache now. But yeah, it gives him a solid defensive Pokemon with some really good coverage, with like fire coverage, grass coverage, dark coverage, even Dragon Tail. Slowking offers APB's team a lot of utility and offers APB's team a lot of fat. It can also potentially be a setup sweeper with Calm Mind. So, yeah. As can Aromatisse. I think it gets Nasty Plot now, too, so that's going to be fun. So, he also drops Hawlucha, Keldeo, and Kyurem, 3 of his big wall breakers, for Terrakion, Tornadus Eye, and Nihilego. Now, Nihilego, I like the pickup, especially with Slowking to sponge Psychic hits, and Registeel to sponge Psychic hits. Shaman to counter the ground types. He has 2 flying types in Vullaby and Tornadus. Granted, you're not going to bring one or both of those every week, so like Shaman I could see you bringing every week, but I think his team does still have a slight ground weakness, because you look at his team, and outside of those 3 mons, everything is getting hit hard by Earthquake. But I think the Heligo could work very well on this team. The niche 103 speed tier is very helpful. It gives him a potential speed boosting sweeper if he decides to run the timid set. It gives him a coverage mon. It gives him a second toxic spikes user and another stealth rocker. So you always have options to bring those rocks or those toxic spikes on something other than Nidoking if you want the coverage, or if you want the coverage on the Heligo, you can bring them on Nidoking. Adding Terrakion over Keldeo. Terrakion has more setup with Swords Dance and Rock Polish, and is a better Z-move user. Yeah, I mean, he does lose a very hard-hitting water type, but I think Terrakion over Keldeo is a bit of just a preference pick on his part, that I think he wanted a bit more setup and a bit more offense, like a bit more setup offense over just straight-up breaking offense, because I noticed he was bringing Calm Mind Keldeo a lot. And Keldeo is not one of those Pokemon that wants to be shackled to Calm Mind every week. So if he prefers to have more of a setup Pokemon, then Terrakion is definitely your choice. And Terrakion can still be a good like Choice Band and Choice Scarf user, which is something Keldeo also excels at, being Choice Specs or Choice Scarf. As for trading away Gigalith to eventually get Aromatisse, so he's basically trading Gigalith for Aromatisse, I like it. I really don't think Gigalith was doing too much on his team. Also, grabbing, though I will admit, he does not really still have a Flying Resist. I know you have Registeel outside of Registeel, but he's always had Registeel. You basically traded away your Flying Resist to get the Heligo, which, it doesn't really want to take physical flying hits, but I'm sure you'll find a way to work around them. Don't worry. I'm not, bashing you. I'm just saying it's kind of funny that you said you picked up Gigalith for a Flying Resist and then traded it away for something that doesn't resist flying. So, also, getting rid of Kyurem for Tornadus gets him a setup sweeper, gets him a hard-hitting flying type, which Vullaby was not. Yes, he loses his dragon typing, but he gains a hard-hitting flying type spammer. He gets to keep the lots of coverage options, because Tornadus does have coverage for days: fire, psychic, poison, even grass coverage. It's got a lot of solid coverage options. It can be physical. It can be the physical bulk up Resto Chesto set. It can be a pivot because it does have U-turn. It gets knockoff. It gets a lot of good support options like Tailwind, especially with Prankster, giving it priority on those. So I think it offers a lot of utility, especially in APB's part, where that Tailwind support could help out with Pokemon like Nidoking, Shaman, Terrakion for an auto speed boost, and a Heligo. So, yeah, I think this does function relatively well on his team. The big problem I have is getting rid of Hawlucha. He hasn't brought Hawlucha once, and Hawlucha Coco Lucha, is one of the scariest combinations of Pokemon in the metagame. And he never capitalized on it. Hi, Doris. This is my other cat, Doris. She is a treat. She is a sweetheart. But he just never used it and then just kind of dropped it. Which, it's okay if that's not your playstyle. I get it. I'm just curious why you're dropping Lucha, one half of one of the most common and scary cores, like, in the metagame. And I hope it goes well for you, but he does lose that automatic threat in Halucha, which can potentially just 6-0 teams under the electric terrain. Like, you've seen what it can do in the metagame. You've seen how scary this thing is. That about covers APB's team. Overall, I think his team about evened out with the trades. I think he keeps a lot of problems. He fixes a couple problems. Overall, I think it about mellows out. Anyway, we'll move on to, I think, our second to last one? Yeah. Our second to last team, which is the Chicago Caracostas, coached by Omega. Now, Omega, we'll start off with him trading away, with him FAing Tapu Fini for Azumarill. Now, Tapu Fini was a reliable defogger, but he already has good hazard removal in Delmise, Aerodactyl, and Scizor. And he will probably be running hazard removal on at least one of them. Tapu Fini was one of the most reliable defoggers in the game, and he didn't pick up another defogger. And when he has a Volcarona, that can be problematic. I hope it's not too big of a problem. It's just one that I'm noticing right away, that he basically FA'd his best form of hazard removal. So Volcarona will probably not be brought to as many games, just because hazard stacking is a viable option that it seems like a lot of his opponents have picked up on. But Azumarill does keep him the Water Fairy typing, does keep him good bulk, it keeps him a bulky, potentially Perish Trapper, and it gives him a hard-hitting wall breaker. Bandit Azumarill, bulky AV Breaker Azumarill, Belly Drum Azumarill. Belly Drum Azumarill can just 6-0 teams. It's not Z, so I can't run Z Belly Drum. Ow! Why is all this stuff in my basement? Oh, right, because it's a basement. That's where all the things go. But Z Belly Drum Azumarill would have been, like, super wah on this team. I'm sorry, I will never make that noise again. But, it would have been super niche, but it does give him another form of priority, which his team is very overwhelming on. He's got Toxicroak, which gets Bullet Punch and Sucker Punch. He's got Scizor with Bullet Punch. He's got Sneasel with Ice Shard, and now he has Azumarill with Aqua Jet. So, that's pretty neat. He traded away Ampharos for Heliolisk. And then proceeded to trade away Heliolisk for Meloetta. Now, getting Meloetta lost him his electric type, and like I said before, I actually really liked Ampharos on his team because it allowed him safe switch-ins with slow volt switches into things like Garchomp, Scizor, Volk, Aerodactyl, Sneasel. His team had a lot of wall breakers, or at least hard-hitting offensive Pokemon, and I thought Ampharos was really good, and then he traded that for a fast electric type, which also has its benefits to get momentum into his walls, like Uxie, the newly acquired Audino, Garchomp. But now he loses those forms of momentum in exchange for a bulky normal type, and a bulky psychic type, a secondary psychic typing for Uxie. But he does get a threat in Calm Mind Meloetta. He gets a bulky threat, which is something that, I mean, I know he can run bulk on Azumarill, Scizor, Volcarona, but now his team is just overwhelming with things that can be bulky setup threats, or offensive setup threats. Like, he has so many setup options now. He also has potential Meloetta Pirouette form, which is why I actually have both Meloettas highlighted here. And Meloetta Pirouette gives him secondary fighting typing, and a very fast speed tier in 123. Basically all for just maybe taking a little bit of damage on your Meloetta to get it into that form and click Relic Song. I think overall, like, he loses his electric type, but he does still have pivoting. He still does have slow pivoting in Uxie, and he's in Uxie and Scizor. So he still does have a bit of U-turn on his team. So he still does have a bit of pivoting, and Volcarona also gets U-turn, I think. So he still has that, although I don't think he'll ever end up running U-turn Volcarona. And lastly, he drops Blissey for Audino. Now, again, I think this is a preference thing. He does lose a Stealth Rocker, which is going to put a bit more pressure on. But when you have things like Uxie and Garchomp, which are two of the best Stealth Rockers in the metagame, you probably don't need to worry too much about that. And Blissey isn't something you're going to want to bring every week anyway. Audino, I think, gives him a bit more of a pivot Pokemon, whereas Blissey, I don't like to think of it as a pivot. I think of it as a come in and just sit there for 5 turns and then switch out sort of Pokemon. Like, Audino is one of those things that can switch in, take a hit, click Wish, switch out with Regenerator into something else. It doesn't need to sit on the field. It just needs to get in, pass a wish, oh god, Siggy's back. Pass a wish, and then leave. And Audino, I think, is still going to fulfill all the roles that Blissey did, except for Stealth Rock. And just keep the role of a passive cleric wish passing support Pokemon. And it does get some utility moves like Thunder Wave and Knockoff, I think. Like, so it does keep a lot of utility that Blissey had. But, I don't know. That's just a preference thing, in my opinion. Overall, I think the trades, again, about evened out his team. I don't think they necessarily... I think they did improve on some aspects, and also kept things relatively the same. He lost some... He gained a pivoting option in Audino, and lost a pivoting option in Ampharos. Yeah? So, okay. Sorry about that. I'm back. Yeah, there might be a small discrepancy in the video. I hope I'm going to check through, but I hope that doesn't affect the video too badly. We're going to get on to our last team, which is the Anaheim Altaris, and we finally see the source of all the Comfeys running around. So, he dropped Comfey to pick up Wigglytuff. Well, actually, no, he dropped Comfey, he traded it to pick up Gigalith. And that, I think, is the single greatest addition to Ace's team. Like, my lord. Gigalith gives him so much utility. It gives him a second Stealth Rocker. I also spoiled the other one. I don't think Wigglytuff gets Stealth Rock, so I'll need to check again after the video. But if it does, then he has 3 Stealth Rockers. If it doesn't, then at least he has a more reliable Stealth Rocker than Excadrill, because Excadrill does not want to be burned by rocks every single week. It gives him a Sand Abuser, and though he lost a form of speed control in Masquerain with the Sticky Webs, he gains a form of speed control with Sand Rush Excadrill. Or potentially Choice Scarf, like Sand Force. The Sand gives Excadrill so much more utility on this team. And it gives him a Sand option that the opposing teams are going to have to prep for. Gigalith is a good Sand Abuser. Perhaps not as good as Hippowdon or T-Tar, but it's still a good Sand Setter, a good bulky Sand Setter to get in, put up the Sand, get up Stealth Rocks, switch out. And Gigalith itself does still have some versatility. Like, it can become offensive if it desires to be. Like, obviously, like, it's more effective as a bulky mon, but who knows? It still has some merits. He dropped Manaphy for Tapu Fini, and that gets him a secondary fairy type. He now has 2 with the addition of Wigglytuff. And I'm going to take a drink quick. Gives him an addition of a secondary fairy type. It gets him another reliable hazard remover, which helps out with Crobat and helps out Hydreigon, so he's not going to be forced to run hazard removal on either of them or Excadrill. He now has one of, if not the best defogger in the game, because Tapu Fini is so good at getting away rocks, like, my goodness. And more importantly, it gets him Misty Terrain, which on his team in particular is really good, because you don't want Gothitelle or Mega Kang coming in and getting Toxic on the switch-in. You don't want things like Hydreigon or Crobat to get parried on the switch-in. Well, okay, Crobat and Hydreigon, bad example. They're going to get parried anyway because they're off the ground. But you know what I mean. He doesn't want his faster threats getting paralyzed. He doesn't want his bulkier threats getting toxic. It gives him so much utility. And I think Wigglytuff gets Heal Bell. So he does have a Cleric. And Wigglytuff, which he traded Masquerain away for, gives him a Wish Passer. And Wish Passing on this team with things like Mega Kang. He has a secondary Wish Passer. So Mega Kang doesn't have to be a Wish Passer. It can just be bulky, and Wigglytuff can keep it healthy. It doesn't force Mega Kang to be the defensive normal type. It gives Mega Kang room to be offensive. It gives Mega Kang room to run that extra little coverage move. It gives Mega Kang so much more utility. I know it's just a Wigglytuff, but it does have like some utility of its own. Like, I think it gets knockoff and Thunder Wave, and it gets like Toxic, Sub, like Protect, all the common moves that literally every Pokemon gets. But it can just run very effective sets with like those moves. Wish Protect, like, it's probably just going to be running Wish Protect a lot of the weeks. But it is going to, I think, on the weeks it comes, I think it can very well support this team. And he drops Emboar for Blaziken. Now, I'm just going to say this right now. Emboar is a better wall breaker, but it doesn't have setup. Blaziken is a good setup sweeper. I'm just going to say this right now. Speed passing is not banned in this league. I'm just going to zoom in. You see this thing? This thing right here? This Mega Kang? He can speed boost into that now. That's all I'm going to say. Yeah. So, he did also change up his Z move users quite a bit. Like, he changed around like almost all of his Z move users. Alolan Raichu is the only Z move user that stayed on his team. Since Manaphy got traded away, he reformatted his team to, instead of Manaphy being a Z move user, it's Hydreigon. And Hydreigon, with Manaphy gone, is the most versatile Z move user on his team. He can run a Z coverage move, he can run Devastating Drake to just nuke something. He can potentially even run like a Z cover. He can potentially even run like a defensive Z move. I don't know what defensive Z moves Hydreigon gets, but could be helpful. I went outside to record so that I wouldn't be disturbed as much, and now my cat is just, he looks so sad because I think he wants me to come inside and pet him, and I feel very bad now. Also, there's a Dunkin' Donuts coffee cup cap out here, but no Dunkin' Donuts coffee cup. It's just kind of sitting on our porch, and I don't know why it's here. Yeah, with Excadrill now being allowed to be an offensive role, Excadrill can now, like, you know, be a good Z-move user. With Sandrush, Excadrill with Z-moves, that's going to put on a lot of pressure. And I think overall will provide a little bit more utility than having Z Crobat. And Z Blaziken over Z Decidueye, that's just, do you want Z Sinister Aero Raid to be a nuke? Or do you want like something like Z High Jump Kick or Z Flare Blitz or a Z coverage move to be a nuke? It's just, that I think is another preference thing. So, overall, I actually really like these transactions. I'm not sure about Manaphy over, Tapu Fini over Manaphy, but it does provide him with a lot more support for the team, provides him with a bulky pivot, provides him with knockoff utility. It provides him with a lot of extra little things that I think could overall help out his team. The Z-move switch-ups, I think, are really going to help out his team, especially Excadrill and Hydreigon. I think Blaziken can fulfill a very niche role on this team. I think Excadrill is given a lot more purpose on this team with Gigalith here now. And I think Wigglytuff is a sleeper pick. I think I'm with Ace when I say Yumta. And if you don't know where that reference is from, I don't think we can be friends. Okay, I'm just gonna peace out after that. This video probably was longer than it should be. I'm gonna go inside and snuggle with my cat because I think he is needy. Bye.